But it is the top of the hour. It is 3 o'clock in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, which means it's time for our Discord AMA NFT 101 with our friend Doug Smith. You heard him already. I'm going to give it to the man with the power, the man of the hour. He's too sweet to be sour. He is the lovely, the talented Nathan. Nathan, how's it going, friend?
Thank you so much for that introduction, Matt. I rarely have people that introduce me like the true king of crypto that I am. I'm just kidding, everyone. I'm a humble man usually, and I'd like to welcome you to this NFT AMA, the NFT 101 with a friend of BitMart, Doug Smith. Now, this is a new thing that we're doing here on Discord. We're really ramping up our Discord profile. We already have AMAs and conversations that we do on Twitter Spaces, and we wanted to expand here because not only can we up the audio quality by a lot, we can just do a lot more interesting things, interact with our community here, and just, have fun, playful conversations. Like if you've been hanging out here, you saw me, Matt, Doug, all talking with each other. Now, before we begin talking to Doug, who is a pretty experienced NFT investor and has kind of a deep knowledge of a lot of the current NFT market, the different chains, what NFT is. We're going to try and not get too technical today. This is going to be more of a beginner course. If it seems a little bit basic for your taste, hey, that's all right. You'll just confirm stuff that you already know. But we wanted to let you know that not only, since we're playing with this format, we're going to try and let people raise their hands and speak audio questions every so often. You can also text questions in the AMA channel for Doug, and we're going to read those along with some prepared questions that we already have that we want to ask Doug. As Matt already introduced, I'm here with my partner in crime, Matt. Towards the middle end of the conversation, I'll let him jump in and ask some questions. It does get a little bit tiring, sometimes being the host, the moderator, so I'm glad to have him join me. And we've also got Claire up here. She's not going to speak, but just know that if you raise your hand or if you're texting questions in the AMA channel, she's going to be the one moderating, looking at them. So behave yourself, okay? Everybody behave yourself. Claire's got her finger on the button. And once again, right before we start the conversation, there is an incentive to be here, right? We are giving away $500 worth of USDT, and the way we're parsing that out is we're giving $50 in USDT to 10 people that ask high-quality questions to Doug in our conversation here, okay? So let me repeat, high-quality questions that we will select later. So whether that's audio or text, you're going to want to have a question ready, and that's how you'll qualify to win some of that sweet USDT. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Doug Smith.
Hey Nate, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to this group and this community, the BitMart community. My partner is obviously also very happy. She's not here, but knowing that for one day she doesn't have to hear me rant to her about my excitement about NFTs in the crypto space, she says thank you as well. But I'm glad to be here. So I'll give you a quick backstory and kind of where the progression of where I came from and how I got to where I am. I came from the enterprise data space for the last 15 years. And what that means is that I help big companies organize and govern their data more effectively to manage their business overall and to create a competitive advantage. I know that probably sounds super exciting to everyone or not. It kind of gave me insight to a lot of data challenges that all companies are facing and they're going to have to address one day or another. So let's put that aside for a minute and I'll just kind of talk about the crypto piece. I became aware of crypto in 2017, and it was a result of a board game, actually. And I don't know if everyone in here will know the board game, but it is Trivial Pursuit, which is I probably would call it the most difficult board game that you could find. And I don't think I've played it since this day that I'm referring to. But there was a question around the two generals problem. And for whatever reason, I wanted to learn more about it because I got the answer wrong. And I'm pretty sure it was the question that made me lose the game. So I went down a dark rabbit hole of YouTube videos and ended up on consensus mechanisms and eventually led me to Hedera Hashgraph, better known as HBAR in the crypto world. And I still didn't understand crypto that much, even though the concepts made sense to me with a math background. And then I started looking at use cases. And Hedera at the time, I think Halo Systems was the name of the company. They were using the blockchain technology to crowdsource social media information in Syria to give early warnings to citizens of airstrikes. And they used AI, but also to consensus of the communities to basically validate and trustworthy information to then actually trigger alarms. And to me, that was like the eye-opening event for me. Like, wow, this is real, because the speed of how fast that information had to travel across different networks wouldn't be able to happen the way that data is managed today in centralized systems. So I was immediately hooked, and then came across your Bitcoins, your Ethereums, and tying back to my career is that I started seeing the technologies themselves solve or will solve a lot of the glaring gaps that are going to be present in the enterprise space. So for me, I'm always forward looking, and just kind of connecting those dots got me into crypto, head first as much as I could, and really just wanted to absorb it as much as anywhere I could. So NFTs, I was always aware of them, but honestly did not buy my first one until probably about this time last year. And for the life of me, I can't even remember actually what made me do it. I'm pretty sure it probably was, I know it was a Lego NFT, not an actual official Lego NFT, but it looked like a Lego NFT. And I either saw it on Twitter or something like that. And I'm like, hey, I just want to just take a shot at figuring out how to transact. Like, what does that process look like? And then I did that, and I got my first NFT, and kind of that was that. After that, the story is it's a long story, but that's where it started. So that's kind of just where I came from. But again, I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited to kind of share the things that I've learned, like how to do things and how not to do things, so I can help you on your journey as you jump into the NFT world.
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's some people here that they might be super into crypto, but they're like just getting into NFTs to the point where, like, even if I say, hey, an NFT is a non-fungible token, they're like, well, yeah, I know that. I looked it up on Google. But after that, I'm lost. So let's literally make this a beginner thing where we're starting at the beginning. So an NFT stands for non-fungible token. But then, Doug, after that, like, what would you say an NFT actually is? Because some people say NFTs, they're just JPEGs. NFTs are just music. They can be all sorts of things. But aside from the definition of their non-fungible tokens, like, what are they to you?
Got it. And I like that segue there. And I'm gonna take that a step further, right? So if you were to say non-fungible, right, it's like in your Google search, it's simplest terms, it's unique and can't be replaced with something else. And I remember when I first was looking that up too back then, I'm like, well, what's fungible? What's fungible? And it's obviously the opposite, right? It's something that can be interchanged, like Bitcoin, a dollar. So if Nate, if you and I exchange, hey, let's trade a Bitcoin for whatever reason, I give you one, you give me one, we both still have one Bitcoin, right? There's nothing unique about that, and that's what makes it fungible. So the non-fungible aspect of it, I'll say I can break it into two different buckets, right? From a fundamental standpoint, I look at it as it's a way to verify the authenticity of a non-fungible asset, right? The one that everyone uses, which is probably still the best example, is the Mona Lisa, right? So the Mona Lisa in itself is unique, and there's only one Mona Lisa. So how NFTs could and will play into the world of art, of physical art, is that's like your certificate of authenticity, right? So I look at it as it's a way to register the Mona Lisa on the blockchain that gives that an identity that cannot be replicated in any shape or form. So for me, that's how I usually go about the definition. You can use any other example as well, but that's the simplest way to kind of to conceptualize the uniqueness of what it is.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's almost like a serial number plus a certificate of authenticity, because a serial number could be applied to any sort of mass-produced goods, from an iPhone to a thing of bagged salad or something like that. But the certificate of authenticity certifies that not only is it identifiable and it has this serial number, but it's kind of one of a kind. It's almost a collectible. It's valuable to whoever gives it value.
You hit the nail on the head, and it's funny you say that, because when I was younger, I always had thought, I was always intrigued by things that maybe not the normal person would be. I always thought UPC numbers were always unique, every single one of them, regardless of if it was the same item or not. Obviously, that's not the case. But yes, you're spot on.
Yeah, I think I probably used to think that as a little kid as well, because you can't help it. You look at a barcode and it's just so strange. It's not even in your world. So,
fun fact, did you know, by the way, if the barcode was invented in the sand? That's where the gentleman's idea came from. Go look that up.
I did not. Wow. Okay. Well, just in case you guys didn't know, I mean, we are having this Discord is a little bit like a party. It's an information party, and Doug just put some chips and dips out right there. Okay. So, kind of going along with so if an NFT is a valuable thing that's on the blockchain, that has the serial number, that has the certificate of authenticity, it's like a sort of value phenomena, right? Because not everybody likes art. Not everybody likes music. I mean, I do occasionally meet people that will just say they're not into art, they're not into music. The things that we're kind of attaching with NFTs on the blockchain. If they're sort of one sort of value phenomenon, but they're digitized, how do you think that they compare to other assets like baseball cards or like stocks or even real estate? Is there a comparison there, or are they just so totally unique that we shouldn't even talk about that?
Great question. So it's funny, because I think most think of NFTs as you immediately put it in the bucket of, I've seen, a CryptoPunk. I've seen a Bored Ape Yacht Club. I've seen these images of these avatars all over social media, and that's my immediate connection to an NFT, right? Because that's kind of what this early stages of the evolution of adoption of NFTs really is. However, if you take a step back, there are so many other categories of NFTs which aren't the, let's like a better term, the sexy versions of pictures, right? Domain names. So domain names, just like today, when you go to, let's say BitMart.com, that's in the world today is Web 2. In Web 3.0, that actually would be an NFT, right? There are elements of aspects of ownership of categories that aren't the collectible piece of the equation. I'll give another example, subscriptions. Subscriptions today, I have a couple NFTs that I use that give me access to a platform. So I'm a data nerd. I think I've made that clear already. And there's a couple analytic tools that I use to help me give guidance towards NFT trends. And to get access to that platform, instead of paying a subscription price like you would normally to your Netflix of the world, I have an NFT. And that badge gives me access to that platform. So digital music, you referenced, virtual real estate. There's so many different categories that are going to start presenting themselves, which I think is going to really perpetuate the real world adoption of the concept of NFTs. However, to go back to answer your question, collectibles today, I would say you could probably compare your Beanie Babies of the world, things of that nature, to the NFTs that we see throughout the ecosystems of crypto. I want to be, I'm optimistic as a whole, but I do believe that, the majority of the projects that you see will not be here in a couple of years, if not a year, right? It's kind of like your 90s bubble, your internet bubble, just like crypto and currency in general. A lot of good ideas, a lot of projects, also some ones that aren't good ideas that are just going to just fall apart and one day not become relevant. Just like, say, Beanie Babies are, although I know my girlfriend still has a couple on the shelf over here, but it's more of a historic moment that you want to keep there, but really there is no value. But then you talk about what is value, right? So the paradigm of what collectibles are and how NFTs play into that, there are definite similarities. It's just that right now there's still so many unknowns, and that's kind of what makes it exciting to me.
Well, Doug, BRB, I've got to go down to my basement and chuck all my Beanie Babies that I really conveniently have invested in. That's kind of unfortunate to hear. No, I'm kidding, everybody. So I think for the purposes of this conversation, Doug, you did a great job of saying how broad NFTs can be, because they can be a unique identifier for all sorts of things that are just purely in the digital world and can also be linked to the physical world. And I think for the purposes of this conversation, we're mostly going to be talking about the mainstream view of NFTs, which is as digital art that you'd see on OpenSea or something like that. And I think that that's probably what most people in this Discord, if they are familiar with NFTs at all, that's what they think of when they think of NFTs. So we're so glad to know that they're so broad, and probably in later conversations, we'd love to expand upon that. But I think for this, we're going to be talking about what you've just kind of alluded to, which is the NFT projects that are mostly artistic based, visual, that you'd see traded around, usually on the Ethereum network, but on other networks. And that actually perfectly segues into our next question of like, so most people's perception of NFTs, once they know about them, right? They know they're a non-fungible token. They see that they're usually on the Ethereum network. You can buy and sell them on marketplaces like OpenSea or Rarible. They see prominent examples in the news, like of the Bored Ape Yacht Club, where it's like celebrities are trading these for millions of dollars. And somebody might look at their TV or computer screen and be like, millions of dollars, but it's just like a digital photo or a digital piece of art or any number of, like a 3D animation. And that really lends the question to, if you can even, what really like makes an NFT valuable in your opinion?
So the simplest answer to that question is the price that someone else is willing to pay for it. And today that could change instantaneously. Right? I know that's not the best answer, but from a purely collectible of the NFTs like we're talking about, that's kind of how I look at it. But really behind the curtains of that aspect, like what drives someone to say, hey, I want to buy something for this price? Also, like what makes the Mona Lisa, going back to that example, have value, right? That one for the Mona Lisa is its historic relevance, right? The artist, Leonardo, and its inherent, the appeal of the Mona Lisa. But with the crypto side of it or the NFT side of it, like a Bored Ape Yacht Club, that itself has kind of grown so much into more of a brand, right? Like with this partnership with Adidas and other things that are coming out of that project, there is a legit team behind there. They have a roadmap. They have bigger visions for what this could be and integrations of those NFTs into different applications and projects over time. To me, that is a good semblance of what value is that what's behind the curtains, right? What do you see behind the actual avatar that's there? Because without that backing, it really just is a JPEG in reality. And I think that's something from just a pure investment standpoint is where I really look for is that what is behind the curtains. Like look past the art, regardless if it's the greatest thing you've ever seen or it's just a rock, right? You have the ether rock, right? What's behind the curtains there that kind of gives you guidance to give you, is this something that I perceive or someone else may perceive as valuable in the future? And so I know we'll probably touch on these other topics down the road here, but there's certain checkpoints of things you want to look at for a project itself. But to me, it's all of those things and also to the unknown, right? What is it possible for this collection or this individual piece of artwork to yield over time outside of the investment part of it, right? Because the investment value will come if the actual inherent value of what's being offered or what's possible with that project to overcome in the future.
So it's primarily subjective is what you're talking about, is really it's kind of willing whatever people want to pay for it is what makes it valuable. But there has to be some objective part of it where somebody likes the way it looks and it will look pretty on a digital display or a wall or something like that. But I have to believe that is a minimal portion of its value.
So agreed. And I think that's one point I just want to make before I forget, because I wanted to mention it today at some point, is that with NFT buying, like I always think about it, it's like looking at it to buying it for art, like pure art is one thing. And I believe you could never go wrong doing that. If you like something you see, just like you would buy normal art and it makes sense within your budget, buy it, right? That's you personally. This is how you look at art, and how my point of view is towards that same item may be very different. And that's absolutely okay. But really it's based on how you perceive it. So if you're looking for a pure art standpoint, buying something that you visually like to see and something you'd want to stare at, regardless of the value of that from how the market looks at it, is not a bad decision from my point of view.
Seems simple. It seems simple enough. If you like looking at something and you like a piece of art, then why not own it? So I think, Doug, actually, we're going to take a break in the conversation here and try out letting somebody else come to the stage and ask a question. And it looks like, Claire, you've allowed Crypto0011. We're going to try and let him or her come to the stage and ask Doug a question. Okay, looks like he's lagging a little bit right there, but we'll give him one more second. Hey, feel free to ask Doug a question right now. Looks like they might be a little shy. Crypto0011, you are allowed to ask Doug a question right now via audio if you'd like to.
Just need to unmute yourself, Crypto0011.
Crypto011 has a Dazed Duck, which one of the Solana projects that I wish I had.
Okay, unfortunate, maybe a little bit shy. That's all right. We're still going to have the floor open right here. Claire, if you want to try and select one more person that has their hand raised, we'll try and get someone to ask Doug a question via audio. Now, please keep in mind, everyone, we're still testing this out, and it is not a seamless process quite yet, but we're making it so. Nobody wants to come to the stage. I'm sure that there's some questions out there for Doug, but if you're not brave enough to ask an audio question, or perhaps
we've got one, Nathan. Brain T. Brain to it with an awesome little flame emoji. Unmute. What do you got for us, friend?
Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask Doug a question.
The PFP is literally fire in two ways.
It's very cool. Doug, take this as a compliment. You're intimidating. People don't want to speak to you. They're intimidated by the vast amount of knowledge that Doug has. Well, okay, look. We're going to keep trying to have people up here to ask audio questions, but for right now, we will continue with some text questions that we have and keep the conversation moving right along. So, Doug, we've talked about what makes NFTs valuable, how it's mostly a subjective price, but there is some objective measure there about how people want to look at art, and a lot of it's cool, and there's a lot of user-generated art, and there's just a lot of cool communities that have sprung up around NFTs, and just creator-focused artistic communities. But it can't be denied that probably a large sum, maybe the majority, 51% or more, are buying NFTs as a sort of investment. Maybe it's a hedge against inflation. Maybe it's just like they're 10 years younger than me and they've never even invested in the stock market, or they just started investing in Bitcoin and they see that NFTs are like a natural investment. I guess I'll put this question in kind of two parts. Are NFTs a good thing to invest in right now? I know that's going to be a subjective answer. And are there different types of NFT investment strategies one should maybe pursue or look out for?
So to answer your first question, are NFTs a good investment right now? I would put that answer in the same bucket as, is a cryptocurrency a good investment right now? Considering your overall market thesis of your geopolitical risk, right? All of a sudden, inflation, there's a lot of other variables that are there. And although some of us would want to say that, hey, crypto and Bitcoin is an inflation hedge and one day maybe become disconnected from traditional markets, they are very much risk on and they are correlated. So right now, I would be somewhat apprehensive in general to jumping into investments. Obviously, if you have proper risk mitigation. You're saying, hey, I'm willing to lose $1 if I have $100 in my savings account, right? Just giving just a perspective that you're sizing properly for how much you want to invest. You know, it's to get the experience for what it is. It can't hurt, but have to go in willing, knowing that there's a chance that it could go to zero very quickly. That's the reality. To answer your second question on different types of NFT investment strategies, I'm going to make the comparison to your traditional markets. Prior to NFTs, even last summer, I got very involved in technical analysis. For those of you who don't know, that is really studying charts and trends and patterns of markets, regardless of crypto. It could be your equities, it could be commodities. They all follow the same patterns. And types of trading, it can be broken into three buckets. Your scalp trades, which I would call the less than 1 day trade. Your swing trades, where you want to hold it for a shorter period of duration. Let's call it a week to a couple months. And then an actual investment, which is a long-term hold. I confidently can say the NFT market over the last 6 months has presented the opportunity to utilize each one of those trading strategies. Obviously, some are more risky than others, like a scalp trade where, you know, hey, I'm looking to buy an NFT when it's brand new, just off the market, hot off the press. Everyone wants them. I want to buy it, and I'm going to sell it immediately after to kind of maybe flip it and make back and double my money. Or there's a swing trade where it's that, hey, there are some undervalued projects, ones that I like that I've been watching. They've been out for a while and no one else appreciates them, but I trust that they're going to do something and they're cheap right now. Maybe I'll buy one of those and I'm going to hold it for a couple months and see what happens. That's what I consider a swing trade. And then an actual investment. These are probably more rare. It's either you've gotten into a project like a Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? You got lucky and got in early and you want to hold that forever. Or you're seeing things that maybe other folks aren't. Where, again, for me, I'll go back to the data plays that I've seen a bunch of projects that are very, very data focused. And data isn't something that's really attractive from an investment standpoint yet. So for me, those types of projects I would look for and I would buy one. And I would not look at the price for years till down the road and just let it sit and let it ride. And to me, that's an investment in that project. And I will ride that to zero or whatever upside that's there. So you can definitely deploy different types of trading strategies, but I would say it can be very closely tied to your traditional methods of investing.
Fascinating. So there's really a bunch of different ways you could go about this. And it's actually really fortunate. We had a text AMA question come in that segues into what you just talked about really, really naturally. Somebody wants to know, how can you tell how valuable an NFT might be before you buy it? I mean, if an NFT loses all of its value, what are some factors that you think makes it lose all its value, or that it just never, rides that wave, as you say, to like become it valuable and become an investment? What are some of the factors that kind of go into determining the value of an NFT? And then what are some maybe common things that you see where NFTs are not going to be successful?
Great question. So I'll kind of spin this towards how I look at investing in new projects, regardless of the type of investment strategy I just went over. If I'm looking to trade it quickly or long-term, just a couple boxes you can check up front to give a little more, confidence that you're not going to end up in a project that ends up just disappearing and falling on its face, days after it launches. And a couple of those things are, looking at the team, right? So when a project kind of puts out, hey, we're minting soon. And for those who know about minting, that's the first time you can buy the NFT for a given project. When they're putting themselves out there, are they doxed? Doxed is a term that is do they exist in a real world setting of, let's say, LinkedIn? Do they have profiles, social profiles that exist across different social media platforms? Were they just created or have they been there for a while? Right. So like if you go to my Twitter, I think I joined Twitter in 2015. Right. So now I've been there. Now that's the absolute, litmus test of, hey, that I'm a real person or not. But just going through and kind of doing your due diligence and research on a project, I always start with the team. Because if the team is present, they're there, That's box number one checked. Okay, number two, with the Discord. So let's talk about Discord. A lot of projects, I believe, every project should have a Discord server. Telegram is also important, but Discord's more important. If you go into Discord, just a quick glance at all the channels, right? Does it look like this was set up today? Or if I look at the BitMart Discord that's here, I could tell it's very nice. There's lots of emojis. It's clearly organized. There's information for each channel, what the purpose is, right? If I look on the right, I can see that all of the moderators and the key folks on the team are here and they're active. Those are all very, very good signs. I can't tell you the early days in NFTs, like probably, let's call it for me, end of last summer, where you go into a Discord and there was no emojis. Not that I can't believe I'm using emojis as a gauge of seriousness or not, but it takes time going through and doing those things, right? But having that just seems like they're a legit shop, and the engagement of the developers and the project owners is also critical. I think that's probably the most important part of the Discord piece, is that if you go in, I like asking questions. I like prompting questions directly to the team. And if they put you off, or they block you, or they mute you, or they don't want to answer questions, then I would be somewhat skeptical. Now, it doesn't mean you have to sit there and get frustrated or mad. It just means that, hey, look for another project, because it just doesn't kind of fit that kind of mold. So those are just a couple examples for me that's there. And also, too, using your peers. The more folks you can create connections with in smaller pockets of Discords, even just like this one here. Like I see there's an NFT discussion channel. It's a good place to start, to kind of just talking about projects and seeing what's good, what looks good, what doesn't. Because having other people kind of give you their opinion, you want to find the ones who have a different bias from you. Because it's always common to think about, hey, I'm bullish right now on crypto in general. It's very easy for me to go out and have that bias confirmation of, hey, that person thinks it's bullish too. Well, I actually go out trying to find the person that's looking for the opposite, trying to find that devil's advocate that's saying, no, you're wrong. Because that actually helps you really kind of condition yourself to go through that testing piece of, well, maybe should I listen to that person, or at least look into this topic further? Because the more of that due diligence you do, the least amount of risk that you're possibly going to put yourself in by making an investment. So I know that was a really long answer to your question, but really in the end, it's due diligence. It's do your own research. I know everyone hears that, but it really is a thing. That take your time going through that. Don't believe someone that's just shilling a project, saying, hey, go to this, it's the next Bored Ape Yacht Club. Assume that everyone is trying to scam you, and there's something behind that you're not seeing, because nothing is too good to be true, especially in crypto.
Yeah, and that's really, really good to know, because that kind of goes over some of the red flags that maybe we'll continue to address later on in the conversation. But don't ever apologize for going on too long, Doug. We want to hear all of your knowledge and all of your info, because you actually have experience doing it. So first of all, thank you for telling us that we have a clean Discord here. We try and keep it clean and organized here at BitMart. And of course, Father Elijah is our moderator here, and he does a great job at that. So, all thanks really goes to him. Second of all, I really appreciated your comprehensive overview of like what to look out for that is kind of unique to NFTs. I guess you could broadly apply it to crypto, but I think that you're just so right in that the NFT market, because it has been so, for lack of a better word, kind of manic and like very affected by large digital crowds, that sometimes you can get into these Discords or get in these digital spaces and you're just like swept up in this mania. So to keep a level head, to do your own research, and to follow the things that you've laid out, I think is very worthwhile advice. I'm going to segue here into one more user submitted AMA question, and then we're going to try and open up the audio again for everybody that's raising their hands. We're going to try and get this right. Keep in mind, it's our first Discord AMA. We're still figuring things out. We apologize. And then after I ask this question, I'm going to let Matt take over, asking a couple of questions, because he is new to NFTs, just like a lot of people in this audience, and he has a unique perspective, I think, on some of the questions that we can ask. So I've got here, somebody wants to know, although there are music NFTs or audio NFTs, they don't seem to have succeeded as much as image and GIF-based NFTs. I'm really curious about this. What are your thoughts on this? Why have they not succeeded as well? And do you see a potential for music or sound NFTs in the future?
Great question. So it's interesting you bring this up, because it was probably about, maybe it was December or January. I started kind of feeling that music NFTs were going to be the next thing, right? Because I'm always trying to look ahead, doing some more market broad research to try to get a feel for those trends, right? Because that's where you want to be. You want to be looking where everyone else isn't. But with music NFTs, I've learned over time that I do believe they're going to become a reality at some point. It's just that right now, the existing systems, let's call them, or infrastructure that's in place with inside the music industry is so embedded with such long contracts that are really with these large music labels are need to sunset before bigger artists have the opportunity to say, hey, I can go do this through a different vehicle. So what I think will start happening first is before you get your big players of the artists that you see today, like on Billboard, having their NFTs being, or music being NFTs, is more like the micro part of it. And I'll say like video games. So I actually met someone a while back that was making video game sounds and just creating all different types of different clips for different purposes of a game. And that's what he did. And he loved it. And actually they're now becoming little NFTs. And his goal is to have them incorporated into video games that developers are now building on, a blockchain like Ethereum. And at one point, maybe he would get some revenue sharing if that game took off. So different components of how you think about music or audio will kind of come together. I also believe, and I can say I've fallen in the TikTok hole, that there are some of these videos that you'll start seeing the progression of someone starting with one instrument and then someone else building on top of it. And all of a sudden now you have 8 different instruments and they're playing different versions of their own melody or concept of that melody. And it becomes like a symphony, right? So that those building blocks of musical clips in the world of NFTs can actually be monetized at some point. And those artists, those creators, will have the opportunity to benefit in that. Where today, if that happened, and let's say someone loved the sound and it went viral and someone else could monetize it, and there's no way to give that owner or have that owner take back what's really theirs because they're the ones who created it initially. So music still has a long way to go. I'm very intrigued with it. Audius is a great platform that has that's probably the closest towards getting to that point where it is more crowdsourced, newer artists. There's a lot of good content on there. I would highly recommend checking them out. But they're probably going to be the Spotify, let's call it, of Web3. But staying close to some of those types of projects and the partnerships that they're making and the announcements that they have would probably give you the best guidance to where the music industry is going as it relates to NFTs.
Gosh, that's so cool to think about. It reminds me of, I don't know if you played this game as a child, maybe some people can relate to this in the audience, where somebody would have a piece of paper and they'd want you to draw a line or a shape or a cartoon, and you just keep passing it around. And, by the 10th person or so, kind of like a game of telephone, just like you're alluding to here with this decentralized symphony, you'd have this crazy, wild drawing. And of course, that was back in the physical space when there was no Bitcoin, there was no crypto, whatever. And even the fact that there's a digitized version of this now, you're alluding to the TikTok where everybody just adds up an instrument. It's kind of a uniquely human collaborative thing. And it's just so creative and fun. And I guess the only word that I have for it is like whimsical, because it's just so far removed from the kind of the mundane working reality that so many adults, are in. So it's a really cool and interesting use case that you're saying could potentially become NFTs. That would be like definitely truly unique because it's just so many unique people working on one thing. It's super cool. It's super cool to think about.
So there is a project, actually, just real quick, sorry, I forgot. There's a project on Solana, which is a blockchain like Ethereum, that is called Pixel Bands. And they've already done that where they've had different NFTs for different instruments. And certain artists, if you played the keyboard or the drums, you would create your own track. And I think they're starting to deploy different variations of how you can bring them together to make a new NFT. But it's pretty cool. But again, it's one of those things that's kind of underappreciated, right? It's the same thing with like the data concept I was saying. It says it's kind of new. It's kind of there where it's not the Bored Ape Yacht Club. But whoever asked that question, it's a great question, and your mind's in the right place because you're thinking the next something different than what's mainstream, and that's really where, from an investment standpoint, I believe you could be most successful.
Very cool. Very cool. We're going to try and get some audio questions in here. Again, we're going to try it again. Everybody bear with us. We're still learning how to make this the absolute highest quality possible. And I want to remind everyone that we want high quality questions, because when you ask a high quality question, you're going to be one of those 10 people that could potentially win $50 in USDT. Sounds pretty cool, right? Just ask a question, you get the info. You're talking to this cool dude, Doug Smith, who's a friend of BitMart, who has all this experience in NFTs, and you could potentially get rewarded for it. So, Claire, please, let's get somebody up here on the stage and try. Magni, welcome.
What is the first thing you like a crypto no investor think when NFT is mentioned to them?
I'm sorry, Magni, we can't hear you that well. Could you try one more time?
I take it again.
Yes, please. And don't worry, if we can't hear you or we can't understand you, you can immediately send your question text to Claire, the watermelon brie right there, and she will make sure that we ask it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Now, what is the first?
I'm sorry.
I go.
You can try again. Ask Doug a question.
Okay. Is the
I think Magni's internet might have cut out there.
I think I've got his question right here, Nathan. What is the first thing you would like, Doug, only crypto investors to think of when NFT is mentioned to them?
So, Claire, can you repeat the question?
This is Matt, but thank you for thinking I'm Claire.
Yeah.
Now I feel very pretty. What is the first thing you would like only crypto investors to think of when NFTs are mentioned to them?
Can you define only crypto investors, meaning that is you're a seasoned investor in crypto and you have crypto and now you're thinking about NFTs? Is that how you would define only crypto?
I would assume it's people who only invest in the crypto space and have not made their way over to NFTs yet.
I would ask the question, why'd you get in crypto to begin with? Right? Because it's like it's a very speculative asset class, right? It's something new. There's obviously lots of pros and cons with it. There's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of opportunity. I would approach NFTs that exact same mindset and kind of ask yourself those questions on, even, in retrospect, has crypto treated me well, right? Have I done well in crypto? If I haven't, I would not then look at NFTs, because NFTs are much more unpredictable than crypto. Even though crypto is unpredictable in itself, I would be cautious of going that route. However, if you have been successful with crypto, I would just apply kind of some of those similar methodologies on how you were to go into NFTs, right? If that you start with a small amount of risk and kind of feel your way out. But in the end, I think education and giving yourself more of those tools, if it's data or just listening to conversations like this or joining Twitter spaces or doing research, is the best way you can position yourself for success, because nothing's going to happen without that work, right? It's not sure, in the very, very, very rare case, which unfortunately you see on TV all the time, is the person who made so much money off Shiba coin or Dogecoin, whatever, right? That's really not good, because it's such a rare phenomenon, just like the lottery, that you shouldn't actually be focused on that, because that's not reality. Reality is the education you're giving yourself, the time you're taking, the due diligence to learn about what something is before investing in it, especially, if you don't want to take that risk.
It's an awesome answer to one of the great questions we have here. I'll step in for a second. When you're talking to somebody who is, a late adopter to NFTs and crypto, and you're trying to break down your passion for it, what are the things you see from crypto and NFT hesitant people that you really want to dispel, or you really think there needs to be more education on from that perspective?
So is your question as it relates to NFTs or kind of Web3 and the whole blockchain movement in general, or both?
Well, let's take a focus narrowly on NFTs. We've talked about some of the different applications, talking about music, talking about art. how would you try to assuage or try to basically say, hey, this is the future? Like, everybody on here now understands that this is where technology and society are looking to go. But how do you explain to people who are your traditional institutional investors, people who might be hesitant to things that are not tangible? You know, we talk about owning art. Earlier, talking about owning Beanie Babies, baseball cards. These are things that are tangible, that are in your hand. Do you say just look at them the same way you would look at gold or look at silver or look at different asset classes that you invest in to try to... I think it's more about changing the mindset of how we view NFTs as a piece of property, because they're non-fungible, but they're also non-tangible. They are things that exist in the cloud on these different blockchains.
Got it. It's a great question. And I think my answer would be depending on the person who's asking, right? And where they're coming from. But I usually do commonly kind of pivot towards the example of giving a real world example of how NFTs can play in that space to first validate or to confirm what it means by the non-fungible aspect. And I'll just do one quickly is, I'm sure some folks in the audience here own a home, right? So owning a home has a physical piece of paper for most part, at least in the US, that's a deed, right? That says, hey, you own this house, which I'm sure hopefully is in a safety deposit somewhere or somewhere safe. But if that was ever lost, what's the proof of ownership that you have to that house? Where does that reside? There's no backup records of that anywhere. And then someone could say, well, no, that's my house. And so that in itself to begin with is kind of just saying that, okay, NFTs are a way of protecting the proof of ownership of said asset. But also too, over time, and this is, as I'm segueing into your answer here, Matt, is the peer-to-peer value exchange, right? So I like using the example of the Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. Web 1, your early adoption of the internet was built just to be built, right, by a bunch of volunteers that had good intentions. And yes, it became a great thing, also became some negatives. But at that time, it was purely read-only, right? I can go into a chat room, I can go onto AOL.com, Lycos, early ones, right? You can see that. And then also Web 2.0, now it's read and write, which is kind of where we are today, right? Where I can enter information into the interweb, and I can also take it back. Now, Web 3.0, I'm going to be able to transfer value to you, right, through the internet. So Matt, here's the house example. If you wanted to sell me your house one day, well, we could do that peer-to-peer. I could transfer you that cryptocurrency through a smart contract, and you could transfer me back the NFT that is the deed of that house. And now we've kind of created that transaction without the need of brokerage fees, mortgage fees, filing fees, all these other elements that from the institutional standpoint, we can kind of make this transaction much more efficient and effective. So I know the answer to your question that I just gave you is much more not on the collectible side of the equation, but usually when I'm talking to folks, I can't just start with the collectible side because they'll immediately just say, this is stupid. That doesn't make any sense. You're not going to sell me. And again, I'm not there to sell. I'm really just trying to educate because I do truly believe that this is the future, right? So I kind of have to segue with or start with a physical example to then lead towards more of the PFP side of it, the collectible side of it. That is, it is more speculative, right? And I think it's going to have some struggles. And I think right now the aspect that most people cling on is that it kind of gives you a digital identity, right? I had a PFP that I recently changed that I actually sold, and I'm really upset about it. But it was basically me. Like, I had a digital identity. That's how I recognize myself. And right now, it's really just in Twitter, right? You go through Twitter and your Discord, you see people's profile pictures that are just represent themselves. I really believe the next big wave of NFTs is going to be when your Facebooks of the world and seeing some things on LinkedIn, right, where you're starting to have more people represent themselves in some digital format of whatever that character may be or that digital piece. And it is somewhat kind of fun there, right? So it's even outside of the value of it or not, it's a new way to represent yourself and to give yourself a digital identity in the digital world. So long answer to your question, Matt, but I think it's just important of just the steps that it would take for someone to understand what an NFT is, make a connection in their head, and then kind of swapping it in with the example of, well, this is why the collectible piece is kind of important and how it's going to make sense in the future world.
First of all, how dare you try to explain something that's very, very, very succinct with a succinct answer. That's not what we want here. No. We want sound bites, babe. I'm kidding. This is an awesome explanation. We're going to head to our next caller, our next chatter in a second. We've got the room open right now, so if you want to step onto the stage and ask a question of Doug Smith, this is NFT 101 brought to you by BitMart. When you're talking about PFP and Capel, we're going to get to you one second. You had me reminded of Web 1, of Kazaa, of LimeWire, of Napster, of that sense of community. And I see that a lot in the NFT and blockchain communities. I think that's the huge part of why this is going to be successful and why it's so successful now, is that it predates the world of crypto. It's community based, and that's sharing information, sharing ideas, sharing content. It all kind of can be traced all the way back to that dorm room and trace back to Napster. And I'm glad that we have a dog translation. But Capel, you're on the line with us. What's your question for Doug Smith?
Hello, am I audible?
You're on the air, my friend. How are you?
Just a second, my dog is barking.
No, it's all right. We love dogs here at BitMart. My dog's meandering around the studio somewhere, so you've got a friend. So, what's your question for Doug?
My question is about the security and the future of NFT. Recently, we have witnessed, a biggest hack at OpenSea, nearly, I guess, $1.7 million, and the result was the drop of NFT sales, and the people are losing interest in this. I am holding currently a good projects NFT, but I see people are losing interest in NFT due to the security issues and the exposures, uh, artist exposures issues. So how do you see the future of NFT regarding this?
Great question. So couple things. So as it relates to just the security piece alone, I think that's what us, I'll call pioneers here, right? If you're on this call, you're early, right? We're going to make it in the end. But anything new, any new technology is going to go through its issues, right? So a lot of these things that are happening, although they're unfortunate, are inevitable and they need to be flushed out. Developers need to understand what's going to happen, because you can't have real world adoption and now there's billions of people here and something like that's happening all the time, because the entire thing would collapse, right? Now, don't get me wrong, just any one person getting scammed is horrible enough, but those things are just inevitable early on. So with that said, it's proper security management with NFTs, right? I always recommend, regardless of blockchain, let's just use Ethereum and use OpenSea, which is a good example. Assuming you probably have MetaMask, right? I always use the 3 wallet approach, right? So you have 3 different wallets, all for different purposes. Your burner wallet, which is the wallet that you're going to connect to OpenSea or connect to a minting website that you're going to buy your NFT on, right? In that wallet, there is nothing else besides the amount of actual crypto that you need for that transaction, and that's it, right? Then you have, let's say you bought that NFT. We're good. Okay. You want to move it, and depending on what you want to do with that, if it's a short-term hold or a long-term hold, let's assume it's short-term, that you're probably going to want to sell it in the coming weeks. It wasn't something that was super expensive. It's, it possibly could go to 0. All right, let's just at least put it somewhere. I'd move that to maybe a short storage wallet, where this wallet isn't actually connected to any of your exchanges or any of those other marketplaces or minting sites, and it kind of is just sitting there with your crypto, right? It's just in your temporary holding area. I wouldn't have a lot of crypto in there or a lot of NFTs. It's just kind of like your middle landing ground. The most important takeaway from this conversation is wallet 3, which is your cold storage, which is your cold wallet. I recommend every single person, if you're in crypto, you probably haven't heard this already, to absolutely get yourself a Ledger, Tether, or Trezor wallet. There's probably a bunch else out there. I personally like the Ledger. Nano X is the one that I have. And move all of your secure NFTs, or your valuable NFTs, actually all of them, to a wallet that's connected to that the ledger and cold storage, and that wallet does never ever connects to a marketplace or connects to any website. It's purely storage only. And when you transfer it out, it's going to go through those hops. It's going to go from your cold storage wallet to that middle wallet, and then from that middle wallet to your hot wallet. So there's never a chance that anyone's touching that cold storage, has any chance of that fraud. So really just want to move your key assets away from those areas where there's possible manipulation and those types of hacks happen, because you've basically now protected yourself from any chance of that being taken from you just by the nature of how the blockchains are set up in smart contracts. I don't know if that was an answer to your question, but cold storage 100% is the answer.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Even I was using a single wallet, but I took a note of your answer. Thank you.
And the best part is too, it's free, right? To create a new wallet, it's free. It just create another one and kind of separate that now. But the cold storage, it's worth, I think it may cost you, from 60 to 120 US dollars. But honestly, it is the absolute best investment you can make. And I can tell you, the day that I did move my NFTs into that, it was like such a good feeling that I'm like, I feel like I'm protected now, right? And then it's just a sense of security that you don't have to worry about. So when you do see that hack come across Twitter or the news that pops off on your feed, that you don't have that sense of fear that did it affect me.
I think
Literally,
you're so
that's really very helpful.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's why we have Doug here. Doug is the master of NFTs right here. I'm going to have to second what you said about cold storage, Doug. And thank you, Kapil, for asking your question here. We really appreciate you. We can move you to the audience now. Yeah, I'm going to have to second your approach to cold storage there. And it's funny that it's called cold storage because there's no refrigeration and no freezing required, even though you may have seen a meme that the best cold storage is keeping your private keys on a USB and then freezing them in a block of ice so that not even you can access them.
I've not seen that. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. They said long-term Bitcoin storage. I freeze it on a USB and put it in a block of ice. Doug is absolutely right about that. Please heed what he is saying there with the 3-wallet approach if you're trying to do short-term trades, long-term trades, or invest. So it looks like we're coming along here with the audio questions, with the questions in the AMA. And it looks like the process that we've kind of landed on is that if you've asked some text questions in the text AMA, you're going to have a higher likelihood of being called on for the audio questions because we know that you're serious and we're able to moderate that and bring you up here. We're having a lot of success so far. We want to bring up another one right now. And so please keep them coming. Doug is happy to be here and ask and answer your questions. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, we can hear you. You can ask Doug a question now.
Yes, I'm going for my question. Wait a moment. NFT and GameFi project are trending in the crypto space. So, what are the various forms of NFT 101 plates used for? Where can we buy it? What is the use case like? And what is the utility? Can users trade NFT through the built-in marketplace? And can it be used outside of games?
If I understood your correct, I'll repeat the question back to you. Are you asking of what are the different types of NFTs?
I'm repeating. Okay, NFT and GameFi project are trending in the crypto space. So, what are the various form of NFT 101 plates used for? Where can we buy it? What is the use case like? And what is the utility? Can users trade NFT through the built-in marketplace? And can it be used outside of games?
Got it. So you're asking specifically about NFTs and gaming and interoperability between games and transacting. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Got it. So I'll be upfront and honest. Although I wish I had the time, I would be very, very sucked into the gaming world, right? But however, so I do know a little bit about it. I would say for like Sandbox or Decentraland, right? I'll use Sandbox as an example. Today, you can buy NFTs inside of their marketplace. So Sandbox itself, and I believe all of them are also available on OpenSea, which is an Ethereum marketplace. Because they have to be built a certain way. I believe the program is called, actually, I don't remember the program name. but there's a long way to go with gaming NFTs. And I don't want to give you misinformation here, but it's very early. And I personally believe, just my thought on gaming NFTs in the metaverse, I don't think many people are going to like my response, but gaming NFTs and the metaverse have a long way to go, because the big players, your Ubisofts, they're so far ahead, and the Nintendos of the world. The second that they create an NFT or they create something on their platform that is somewhat interoperable, anything else that's partially there inside the decentral world of NFTs is probably going to become invaluable pretty quickly. So I think, although there's a lot of opportunity there also is a lot of risk. I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but it's that's all I got.
Thanks for your answer, but I am a bit nervous because I am first time in the mics. On the mic,
Oh,
sorry.
no,
You're a natural.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks, and have a good day.
You too.
Absolutely. He was one of the brave ones. Don't be shy to come up here and talk to Doug. Doug's a sweetheart at the end of the day. And although he might not know that much about gaming NFTs, it's just because he has a good reason, right? We heard him. He'd get sucked into it. Then he wouldn't be on this AMA. His girlfriend might leave him. It's better, okay, if he knows about the different types other than the gaming NFTs. But that doesn't mean he can't speculate on it from his vast knowledge that he does know. So we're going to take 2 more audience questions, and I'm going to let Matt bring up those people. And then we're going to end with a question by me to Doug before we let him talk about some projects that he has coming out related to NFTs, if he wants to speak on them, or some generalities that he does. So Matt, please bring up 2 more audio speakers or read 2 more text questions, and then we'll end with the final question here. I think we've had a pretty good run here so far.
Yeah, no, this has been a great time. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Doug, for putting up with us and dropping all of that sweet, sweet, sweet knowledge. Taking a look here in the chat, and please keep your questions coming even after this. We want you guys to be an active community here on Discord. Our question right now, we've got someone coming in here in the chat. We'll have someone drop in a second. Someone asking, what are your NFT green flags, Doug? That coming in from Sinshi Chikun.
Oh, green flags. Huh. That's a great question. So I personally like projects that are contributing to the progression of the ecosystem. I'll give an example for that. So I've mentioned a couple of times now, like, I'm a data person. I appreciate anyone trying to create analytics platforms or ways to give users insights on trends, on information that's coming with a given project. So anything that has some sense of utility, where it's not a, hey, here's a roadmap of the things that we say we're going to do, and they immediately have something that's tangible, that's a green flag for me. I also like projects who are helping around security. There's a project on Solana. It's called Rad Rugs, and their NFTs are rugs. But what their purpose is they're basically doing vetting as much as they can of other projects for the legitimacy. And on their site, throughout the projects that are coming, you can hover on it. It says, hey, this has a score of, let's call it A, B, C, D, F of what they're providing to the ecosystems or the team docs, as I mentioned before, right? Is the team, do they have social credentials? Is it something that's new? Is there minimal risk, right? So any project that's really helping grow this Web3 thing, to me, is a green flag in my book, versus one who is just saying, hey, go stake your NFTs, you're going to get this yield, and it's going to be great, right? So I'm exaggerating for effect there, but projects who are builders are the green flag for me.
Astounding. And let's go to the requests really quick. We're going to try you one more time. Crypto0011. I want you to let us know what you're thinking. Are you there, friend? Going once. Hey, we gotcha. Crypto0011, you with your fancy duck that Doug is jealous
Dave
of.
Duck.
What Dave Duck? What do you got for us, our quacky friend?
How do you difference NFT from others marketplace, sir?
What was your question?
How you different NFT from others marketplace?
Did anyone, if you can unmute first and then speak, I missed the first part of your question.
Sir, I ask you, how do you difference NFT from other marketplace?
So I think actually I got in a chat with Crypto0011. I believe what he's trying to ask is, how do you differentiate one NFT marketplace from another? Is there a superior one? Do they have different aspects you should maybe pay attention to? Is there one that's easier to use than the other? Is that correct, Crypto0011?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Got
what he
it.
wants to know is how
Great
should you
question.
differentiate NFT marketplaces from another, maybe compare, contrast?
Great question. So depending on the blockchain, right, there are obviously different blockchains. And, I think so Ethereum has a handful of marketplaces, right? OpenSea, looks rare. There's a lot of ones that are more for individual pieces of artwork. Or like a Solana who has, I think, about 5 to 10 different marketplaces. For me, it's about the user experience, right? So there's two different point of views. It's I'm the buyer, like I'm going there to transact. What are the tools? What are the things that I need to make a successful transaction, or an informed transaction, I should say, versus maybe a project who's trying to sell their NFTs on a marketplace. They may have different requirements. So primarily, I know this audience is probably going to be the buyers, so let's stick with that. I appreciate marketplaces who are transparent, and they're also listening to the community on the updates of things that they're asking for. So I'll use Magic Eden, which is a Solana marketplace. A lot of folks have been asking forever about putting rarity scores on the NFTs. And for those of you who don't know, a rarity is if there's a collection of 5,000 NFTs for one project, there is one that's the most rare and there's one that's the least rare. And there's a whole bunch in between. And today, until recently, you have to go look up in a separate tool, hey, I have NFT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to find that rarity, how much it is. I have to go do extra work to do that before I go sell, to determine what price point I want to sell at or buy at. On Magic Eden now, is I can easily see there's a score there that says this is the rarity of that NFT. So it makes that transaction much quicker, and I have more information up front to do that. So it saves me time. So long answer to your question, Crypto, great question, is the tools the marketplace is giving me to make a better informed decision is the marketplace that I would rather use.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
No problem. Great question.
Seems simple enough there, and I didn't even actually know. I mean, having gone on NFT marketplaces myself, but not having really gone too deep in the weeds with them, I'm enlightened here by knowing that there are so many different tools that I really should be learning about. So anytime I find anyone that knows more than me in the crypto sphere, whether it's NFTs, crypto in general, altcoins, whatever, I am happy to learn more, and I think Doug has done that in spades here. Wouldn't everyone agree? Would you not agree? It's been an information party, and Doug has definitely brought more than just the chips and the dip.
Oh, it ain't nothing but
So
an
I think
info
we're gonna
party.
exactly nothing but an info party. That's how we keep it down here at BitMart. Be smart. Come to the BitMart info party. We're gonna end here now. Unfortunately, we do have to end. We can't take up all of Doug's time. He does have other stuff that he has to do. But we've got one more question for him, and it's kind of a philosophical, broad, grand question related to NFTs, Doug. So nothing crazy, nothing like the meaning of life or anything like that, but perhaps the meaning of the NFT market. The question is, what are your feelings on the state of the NFT market today and moving forward into the future? Please answer any way that you want. Be as open-ended as possible, but
So I know, yeah.
Don't take all the time.
No. So I know everyone kind of makes that joke. It's like one, I don't know, it's like one crypto year feels like 10 human years, right? So I can say that from when I went headfirst into NFTs back in August, like where it was every day I'm transacting and just, it was like new things were being sprung up, and it was just like, it was so exciting. What the market was then and the market is today is vastly different. And even in between there, it's almost like every 2 months there's a significant shift in either what's good, what's bad. There's either like, it's almost like a bull bear market type of thing, but it's more about the types of projects that are being born. So I'd say early days on, and if you haven't told already, I've probably the most experience in Solana. But just early, it's kind of where I went. I still have minted across all the other blockchains for the most part, but I could speak the most from Solana. Is that early on, it was like there was only so many projects, right? So it's just like each one could be successful. I'm putting little quotes here with my fingers based on its ability to sell out and also then to keep a decent price in the market. Since then, because it became very easy for anyone to create a project, you started now getting derivative projects, which are just basically copies and small variations of that, of just exponentially coming into the market. Where I was at one point trying to keep track of how many projects there were, when at one point there was only one every day. I think there's a point last year, I think there was almost like 500 new projects coming each day, right? And really, if you think about it, I can't define that as a project. I define it's just that it's very easy for someone to create a project and possibly get rich quick. But in reality, the person who gets screwed is the consumers, right? So long answer to your question, I think right now there's an oversaturation of garbage projects, and I'll be nice when I say that. But it's because it seems like there's this like lull where actually a lot of older projects, ones who are still in existence from months back, are now kind of making a run. But I'll emulate what I said earlier, is that I believe there needs to be more builders. The more builders that are contributing to the progression of the system and are not looking for those quick wins, right? You don't want to find the big projects that are like immediately so much hype, so much that's out there, and that everyone's saying, hey, I'm getting rich, sell this. Sure, there may be the rare instance of that, but that's not reality. The ones who are telling you that this is a great project, they're the ones who are selling in the background, and they're making money, where in the end, you're the ones who are left with the NFTs that are worthless, right? So I believe that right now it's a weird period, just because also of the geopolitical climate, the inflation, like I mentioned earlier, just overall financial markets and the instability. But I do believe that I'm going to call it Q2, end of Q2, Q3, that once some of these things get flushed out, there's going to be a really nice upside. And what's going to happen is it's going to be the projects who survived, and they survived because they were transparent with their community. They were showing that their value, they're building, and there are also new projects coming in. They're saying like, hey, I'm looking to do something different. We're trying to separate ourselves from the rest, and we're trying to be pioneers in this next wave and listen to what we're doing. Or if not, go build yourself, right? So I think the takeaway for this group is, you have an idea, talk to people, flush it out, go through iterations of it, and maybe go build something, right? Because really in the end, building is what's actually going to make this thing become reality. Where in the end, if it's just us going around buying profile pictures and trying to get rich, it's going to eventually die altogether, and there's a much more likelihood of you losing money.
Yeah, and I know that you're really interested in the kind of utility and creator space behind NFTs, Doug. So at our ending point here, I don't know if you want to share some stuff that you're working on or thoughts that you have as closing thoughts for a project that you have, or how people could maybe keep up with you if they've really gotten a lot from your knowledge here today.
Yeah, sure, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk here. It's been fun, by the way. I would definitely do this again. It's enjoyed just kind of again sharing my thoughts. Sometimes I think they're kind of just my thoughts, but hey, if people are going to listen, I'll gladly have a conversation. Some of the comments I just mentioned was really kind of how I would segue into the project that I'm working on with my team. I won't go too much into details with it, but I'd say just follow me on Twitter. I think it's at Think Simply, and I believe we'll probably share it with the group after. Where in the coming days, we're going to be announcing a bunch of things. But without going into too much detail, we're really focused around the creators, as you just mentioned. Nate, is that I'm really looking for, artists. How can artists become someone in this space that maybe are not an artist today, right? A lot of the bigger artists get a lot of attention. They're the ones everyone's following, but I consider myself a C+ artist, right? Well, let's say, hey, I wanted to maybe make that something and possibly make it a side gig, or maybe I could monetize it some way. Someone's beeping outside. I apologize. So really what our project is focused on is trying to find these creators. We want to give you a platform to share your artwork. And at the same time, we also want to have charities and goodwill causes benefit from possibly selling your artwork. So really, we're trying to create this kind of new platform, this new community that's focused around creators. So what I would ask for you is that if you are an artist or you know anyone else who is an artist, come check out. It's called Be My Tree. We'll kind of share the link after. It's also on my Twitter profile, and we're actually just kicking off a contest for a drawing contest around. We're calling it Web3 Summer, even though it's still not summer yet. We can still manifest it, right? It's kind of around the corner. And we're asking everyone to kind of share, if you're an artist, a picture or a drawing that represents a summer past that made you happy, or something that you want to share. And we're doing a $1,000 giveaway, doing some whitelist spots. The contest goes through May, so you have time. But just come check us out and kind of share your art. And if not, just join our community and say hello. Because that's, I think, really where it's going to come down to, is just us just talking, having conversations, and building together. So there's my pitch.
Well, you heard it right here, everybody. Not only does Doug know quite a bit about NFTs, and he's been kind enough to share his time with us today, he actually has a project where you thought that you were just going to get $50 USDT by asking a high-quality question here. Well, now Doug wants to help you out, and he wants you to give your summer pitch, your summer drawing. There's all sorts of good feelings, nostalgia associated with summer, and you could potentially win another $1,000 while still learning about NFTs from a very experienced man himself. I want to thank Doug Smith for being with us here today on our very, very first NFT AMA here on Discord. I know we're still figuring it out. Everyone in the audience, you've been very kind. You've been very patient and gentle with us, okay? I promise we will continue to improve and innovate. That is the BitMart way. Doug, thank you so much here for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everyone's been great. Look forward to coming back.
Of course, we will most definitely have Doug back at some point, because we know that this is just the tip of the iceberg with his knowledge. So if there is nothing else that we have to do here today, then I will say goodbye to everyone out there in Discord land.